It's been a mixed 3 years, hasn't it? 3.5 years, in fact, for Sport Republic at Southampton in their ownership. There was a previous era, I think, in the 2010s, when ownership at Southampton felt so stable and the club was run so smoothly. And I think in recent years that's certainly been eroded. After Sport Republic took charge or took ownership of the club in January 2022, they were relegated in their first full season at the helm. They responded well with promotion via the playoffs last season, beating Leeds United with a Russ Martin's possession-heavy style of football that took them on a 25-game unbeaten run. But it was quite the opposite of that in the Premier League, as they lost every week, as Russ Martin's lack of adaptability saw him come a cropper in the Premier League. They didn't replace him with the best manager either. And so they've come crashing back down to the Championship and are in need of another rebuild. But they've appointed a manager or a head coach in Will Still, who, even though he's yet to work in English football, he still caught the eye of the public in this country because of his unique coaching journey, having never played the game and with minimal sort of coaching qualifications. He's gone into the game in a very untraditional route and he's worked his way right up. So how much of that is down to Will Still and his coaching brilliance, and how much of that is just due to the unique nature of his story? I think we're about to find out this season, and I think we're about to find out whether Sport Republic can learn some of the lessons of the first 3.5 years and take Southampton forward to reclaim what can be. And in the recent past, so far in this century, they've had moments where they've been a top 10 Premier League side. That's the long-term ambition to get back to. Obviously, a long way between now and there. Are they up to the start of that challenge? That's what we're going to discuss on this Summer Deep Dive. Yes, welcome along to EFL Debate. I'm speaking to a fan of each of the 72 clubs across the EFL between mid-June and mid-July. So if you want more of that content, you could do us a massive favour by getting subscribed to us on YouTube and on Spotify. We're also on TikTok now as well. Delighted to be joined by Martin Sanders of Football Martin, fantastic growing YouTube channel on Southampton and football in general. Martin, thanks so much for joining us this afternoon. Really appreciate your time out of your busy schedule. Is the pressure on Football Republic off the back of 2 relegations in 3 seasons?
Yeah, I think there's huge pressure on them. I think it's they've obviously, since they've come in and they've become the owners of the football club, we were a well-established, well-run Premier League club. Look, I think latterly under the Chinese owners, we were maybe flirting with the bottom end of the table, but Hasenhüttl worked on a really tight budget and did a really, really good job and guided us to safety every year that he was there. We never set the world alight under Hasenhüttl, but we were well established. Sport Republic come in and they said that they were going to keep the foundations in place, the people that had got us to where we were, and they weren't going to make massive changes. Well, they did quite the opposite, Gab, to be quite honest. They made huge changes throughout the club, to be quite honest. A lot of change in it sort of behind the scenes. They lost a lot of staff, a lot of good staff. Started that first season in the Premier League, their first full Premier League campaign, and sacked Ralph fairly early in that campaign. Put the wrong man in charge of Nathan Jones. We were relegated. Obviously, Russell Martin was their next manager. Had a okay Championship campaign. Managed to get back to the Premier League. Some might say we were quite lucky in the end, but we did get back to the Premier League via the playoffs. Got ill prepared going into it. They made masses of mistakes yet again in a transfer window, which they've done a lot in their time at the club. And it was a disastrous campaign last year for loads of reasons and lots of reasons. But the pressure is on them. There's no doubt about that. They cannot afford to get this summer wrong, because if they do, we'll be a club that's stuck in the Championship for a period of time.
Yeah, I suppose Sport Republic have appointed a CEO in Rasmus Ankersen, who was credited with some good work at Brentford. I think he's faced a lot of criticism in the last 2 or 3 years at Southampton. Do you think that he needs to get that, depending on the level of influence he has over footballing and operational decisions, do you think he needs to get this appointment right in Will Still?
Yeah, it's a massive appointment. Though Ankerson's still heavily involved, he's moved to the Turkish club. Obviously, they got the three clubs that they own, Sport Republic, and he spent a lot of time with the Turkish club Kasopi. He heads that up the majority of the time. Dragan Solak, who is the money man behind Sport Republic, he's took a fairly heavy involved role within the club now. He's become the club chairman at Southampton, so that was a big move from him. He yeah, he's had a bit to say recently as well. He's come out in the press and spoken a lot about their time as owners of the club and the mistakes that have been made. Ankerson now is, though he's heavily involved with the Turkish side, yeah, he will be an advisor to Dragan Solak. But the main man at the football club is a man called Jonas Spores. He's come in as the sporting director at Southampton. He's picked up that role that was headed up by Jason Wilcox. He departed at the back end of that last championship campaign. And I think that was a pivotal moment, actually. We were at Portman Road taking on Ipswich Town on the day. We lost the game. And just before that game kicked off, it broke that he was leaving. Jason Wilcox was approached by Man United. He went to Man United. Saints didn't put anyone in his post. They had Darren Mowbray, who was doing a lot of recruitment at the time. He stepped up, or Russell Martin, and they made an absolute pig's ear of it. Let's be quite honest about it, because they didn't recruit well enough. But no. Jonas Spores now is a really, really big part of the day-to-day player operations and the recruitment process. So, this is his appointment. So this appointment of Will Steele is all been via Jonas Spores. It's his man.
And what's Jonas Spores' background then, Martin? Do we know much about him at the moment?
I know bits about him. I think he's worked in Germany, worked at a lot of clubs. I don't know loads and loads about him, but he's come to Southampton, and it's a big pressure. It's a big gig to take on. It's a huge job to take on, and there's a lot to get right in terms of recruitment that's been so bad. I don't think they've appointed the right managers over the last year. Really, they've made terrible managerial appointments. Yeah, this is a big one, and you could say it's a bit of a gamble, because it is a bit of a gamble. I think any manager coming in is a gamble. Somebody that doesn't know the Championship or doesn't know English football maybe as much, it's a big punt. It is a big punt. They brought people in, like Paul Trollope's come in to work with him, with Will Steele. He was at Luton Town last year. I think he was with him actually for a few years. He was involved in the playoff. He's involved in the relegation as well. So he knows the Championship. So they're trying to put people around him that know the division, which I think is really important. Something that Russell Martin didn't have last year in the Premier League. He didn't have people around him that knew the Premier League.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in terms of the Will Steele appointment, this is somebody who's become quite high profile in the English media because of this unique journey that he's been on. Obviously went on a long, in his first job in France, he went on a long unbeaten run as well, didn't he? Which gave him a lot of attention. Are the noises that you've heard around Will Steele and his coaching ability and some of his appearances on mainstream media like the Jake Humphreys podcast and the Monday Night Football and all that kind of thing, have these kind of given you the impression, as well as some of the reviews that you might have come across elsewhere, that Will Steele is the real deal?
Yeah, I do think he's the real deal. And talking to people inside the football club a couple of weeks ago, I got the impression that, well, they told me he interviewed really well. He interviewed really, really well, that he did his due diligence before he went in. He knew the playing squad, and from reading between the lines, he was the most impressive person that they interviewed. So they've appointed the man that they feel was the best that they've interviewed. And I did enjoy that podcast with Jake Humphreys. I thought it was a really good podcast, a really good insight into who he is. I thought he's very grounded. He's not got an ego. I don't feel like he's needed. He seems like a young man that's worked really, really hard to get to where he's got to. Whether he has that aura around him, I'm not sure, to be quite honest. I don't really necessarily, I've spoken to you off camera about that. I don't necessarily feel that he does, but it'd be really interesting to see once things start to get going and how he interviews and how he interacts with the players. We'll be really, really interested it's getting that respect from a lot of players that have played at the top level that have got big egos. Let's be quite honest. There's players there that would think that they're Premier League players. I do think he's the real deal. I think it's a huge challenge for him, and certainly as a relegated side with parachute payments, I would, for me, and I think anybody else, I've listened to a lot of podcasts that say the same. I think the expectation is automatic promotion. It is for a team that comes down with the money that Southampton will come down with and the resources they've got. It has to be automatic promotion, and that will be the ambition from the fan base, and I think certainly within inside the hierarchy as well.
Yeah, I think into the charisma side, I certainly think that I can think of managers in English football who they've had real charisma, and it's been a factor behind they've been behind success. But I also don't see it as the be all and end all. I've come across managers. I think similar would probably be said about Kieran McKenna in that I think he's a brilliant tactician and manages people very well, but you wouldn't say he's necessarily a super charismatic person. He's just quite down to earth. But I think for a short amount of time, I think the charisma can light everything up and, be like a sort of a fire, if you like. But I think over a long time, if there isn't the substance behind your ideas, I think the players probably lose respect. Whereas I think if your ideas, your tactics, your technical work is solid, then I think over time, I think players kind of respect that. So yeah, I'm not overly worried about that side with Will still, and I imagine that the technical side of his work is going to win out.
Yeah, no, I do as well. I totally agree. I'm excited to see how he sets the team up and what his preference is in terms of back four, back three, how does he set his sides up? I think that will be really interesting. We'll get a little glimpse of that this weekend because the first pre-season friendly is down in a little town just outside Southampton called Eastleigh. So very much looking forward to go into that and having a first glimpse at how he sets his teams up and what he's done in his first few weeks in pre-season will be really interesting.
Certainly will. In terms of the squad, I'm wondering actually about formation, Martin, first of all, because I think I've heard contrasting things about what Will still likes. I've spoken to some people who say he does like a back three or dabbling with back three at times. I think 4-2-3-1 is a formation. I think there's one system that he's had that's kind of a team sheet 4-2-3-1 that can convert into more of a wing back system. So I think, but the overriding message that I've got around Will Still and formations is that he's very adaptable, both between and in games, and he's a solution finder. So that's one thing that that excites me.
Yeah, and it does me as well. To have a manager that's adaptable will be a breath of fresh air to any Southampton fan because we've had we've had three managers, Martin, even Juric, and Simon Rusk, who were very, very adamant and set in playing one way of football and were very unflexible. They weren't flexible in game, and none of those managers could really manage in-game management. Certainly at sort of key points in games. Seeing games out, being savvy at times, finding ways to break opposition down when they play with low blocks. And I'm excited that we've got a manager that's prepared to look at what he's got, what personnel he's got, and find solutions. I think that's really interesting.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's have a look at the goalkeeping units then, Martin. You've got Alex McCarthy, who I think is a very reliable backup, a safe pair of hands to come in. I think you might agree. But you've got Aaron Ramsdale, who's currently the number one. I imagine that he's a goalkeeper of a profile that would suggest Premier League clubs might want him. But I'm wondering if you think last season might put clubs off him, or do you think that he was one of those that did well in a really poor side?
Yeah, he did really well in a really poor side. I thought he was brilliant. I was at every game bar three. He made multiple saves in some games. He kept scorelines respectable, even in games where we were beaten 4-0. Brighton and Hove Albion at home stands out to me, where we were absolutely battered second half by them, and he's made save after save and kept the scoreline respectable. He's man of the match in a 4-0 defeat, which is quite incredible. It shows how poor we were, but he was brilliant. He picked up man of the match multiple games in a row. Even the game that we did win, the one win at St Mary's against Everton, was down to him and his goalkeeping and the saves that he made. He made one from Michael Keane from a header that was absolutely magnificent. It was him. I think it was in one of the saves of the season that I saw somewhere online. He was brilliant, Gab. He will get snapped up. There's no doubt about that. He'll be eyeing that England World Cup squad next summer as well in America. He want to force his way back into Thomas Tuchel's plans. He's an England goalkeeper without any question. Whether we've got a goalkeeper at the club that's quite good enough to step up and be consistent week in, week out does worry me a little bit. The goalkeeping department does worry me a little bit. Alex McCarthy's there, really, really good backup, but will not be able to play a whole season. Gavin Bazunu had his injury issues. He went off to Standard Liège. He come back injured, but he is in pre-season training. Had a really tough championship campaign last time round. I do think they'll potentially look to bring a goalkeeper in. There was talk about potential number threes. They've let Joe Lumley go from the goalkeeping department, who was the number three. It will be interesting to see what they do. They will bring another keeper in. I'm pretty sure of that.
I don't think Lumley would have played much. You might as well have had Joanna Lumley as the third choice goalkeeper.
Terrible. Yeah, it was terrible.
Just and also I suppose you've got two goalkeepers that would be ahead of him, because I think Bazunu and McCarthy at least, and maybe one more if to replace Ramsdale. Do we have an inkling on the number one that's going to be coming in?
No, we don't. It's quite quiet at the moment. There's not loads of links with goalkeepers. Ramsdale's reported back to training this week, and everyone's quite excited that he's there and that could he potentially stay next season. I just don't see somebody that's getting paid £110,000 a week playing in the Championship next season. I just don't see it happening. There's not loads of links at this moment in time. It will be interesting to see what they do. Be really interesting. A lot of people love to see us go and sign Victor Johansson, who's impressed a lot of Saints fans last time round in the Championship. He's brilliant. He was at Rotherham at the time. He's been at Stoke. I think he's somebody that you definitely be looking at. But we will need a goalkeeper. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm wondering about the right back position. You've got James Bree, who's very played in the 23-24 promotion winning squad, of course. Very technical right back. And you've also got Sigawara, who I think must have been a signing from 2024.
Yeah. Sigawara come in last summer to play back up to, I think he was actually brought probably to play as the right back, because I think they expected to lose Carl Walker-Peters last summer. They didn't. They managed to keep Carl, and they were really lucky to keep him. He had a good campaign, really. A lot of people were like, oh, yeah, his time's up. His contract expired. He's gone. He'd be a massive miss next season, because Sigawara looked way short of being anywhere near good enough to play Premier League level. One of the worst right backs I've seen at times under pressure. Was very hesitant, would kick the ball out a lot. Defensively, really, really poor. And I'm not convinced actually he'd be good enough for the Championship. I think he's got a long way to go in English football to be anywhere near good enough. I pray that we bring a right back in. James Bree, I don't see him being the regular right back. He's never, ever really nailed down a spot in the side consistently. I think there will be in the market for a right back. I don't think there's any doubt about that. There was talk of an American right back that they were looking at. But yeah, it will be an area that will get strengthened, I would think.
Okay, so we're already up to 2 more additions required then. But one area that I think you are quite well stocked, I think you'll agree, Martin, is centre half, because you've got Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Jan Bednarek, Jack Stevens, Nathan Wood, Bella Kopchap, Ronnie Edwards, Joshua Corgi, who signed this summer, and Kay Sander as well, and Harwood-Bellis and Bednarek, if I've not mentioned them at the start. So what's that? That's 8 centre halves that you've got on your books at the moment. Quite a few.
Yeah, they will move some on. Jack Stevens was given a 3-year contract extension today. That's just been announced. So he's got a 3-year contract extension, much to the disgust of a lot of Saints fans. He's been captain. He's a top man. Massive part of everything we do at Saints. He knows the club inside out. Whether he's a starter week in, week out is another matter. I think Harwood-Bellis will be sold. I think he'd be someone that exits. I also believe that Bednarek will probably go. I don't see him being there next season. I'm really excited by Ronnie Edwards because of the campaign that he had with QPR. I think he'd be good.
Yeah.
He's physical, he's sharp, he's quick on the ground. They want pace and athlete, someone that's more athletic than what they've had. I think he'd be a good addition, but I do think there'll be exits. Bella Kopchak will definitely go. He won't be there next season. That's for sure.
What I'm quite excited about with both Ronnie Edwards and Quashie, you mentioned the height and athleticism of Quashie, which really excites me. But with Edwards and Quashie, they're actually good on either foot. So I think in terms of building up from the back, I don't know whether Quashie's classed as a ball-playing defender, but Edwards certainly is, and he's very composed. So I think between them, there's potential for a good pairing there. But obviously, you've still got Jack Stevens in the mix as well.
Yeah. I think that centre back wise, they've got loads of options. Like I just think that they just need to thin out the squad. There's just too many bodies. But I do like the thought of Roddy Edwards getting that opportunity next season. I think they raved about him at QPR, so he'd play a key role. I just think with Taylor Harwood-Bellis, Saints are going to need to capture around 20 million to upwards to see him go. Whether anybody is going to be prepared to pay 20 million for a defender that had a pretty poor Premier League campaign last season, I don't think he's Premier League ready by any stretch of the imagination at this moment in time, Harwood-Bellis. But I do think he'll end up leaving. I just think someone will take a punt on him. I'm not sure where he'll end up. It'd probably be a newly promoted side, but yeah, we will see.
Yeah, it's interesting that because normally you'd want to have been one of the few that managed to stand out in the poor side, but actually, if Harwood-Bellis struggled, then but he has played for England, which kind of probably increases the value a little bit. So we'll see with Harwood-Bellis. You're also paying for potential, I suppose, with him as well. Yeah, it's a tough one. Jack Stevens, Martin, are we talking about him as one of those experienced figures? He's had 11 or 12 years of experience in English football now, somebody who knows the drill, can provide that bit of know-how for the Saints.
Yeah, I think he's an important person to keep at the club. A lot of people won't be happy to see him sign a new contract today, but he's been captain for a long time. He's not a Premier League player, we all know that, but he'd do a good enough job in the Championship. But without any doubt, he'd be absolutely fine in the Championship next season. Knows the club, been there for 17 years. You need people like that in the dressing room. I think he'd be an important body to have around for sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. In terms of the left back position, I'm curious to see how Ryan Manning can do. He seems to have become very much a left back. He actually came through Queen's Park Rangers as a central midfielder, but I think because he was more of a dynamic midfielder rather than a particularly progressive one, it meant that he ended up transitioning into more of a fullback role and obviously left back because he played there. I think he might have had a stint at Rotherham as well. And so I think with Ryan Manning, it's that dynamism, that energy that he brings. And he played a lot under Russell Martin in the 23-24 campaign, didn't he? And elsewhere, Southampton have got Charlie Taylor and Wellington, a lad from Brazil as well. So I'm wondering, would you make Ryan Manning favourite, Martin, for that left back spot?
I think Wellington did well when he came in last season. I've got to be honest. I thought he was really good. He looks a real physical defender, quick. I think he'd be pushing Ryan Manning. I would think Wellington will probably be the starter actually. From what I saw at the back end of last season, he coming in January. Wellington, he'd signed a pre-contract prior to that. And I've got to say, I was really impressed with him. I really like him. I think he become a bit of a fan's favourite in a really, really short period of time, which you don't often see, a player become a fan's favourite so quickly. He did that. I think he'd be the left back next year. I really do. I think it will be Wellington.
Wellington beefed up the defence then, did he?
He did indeed.
Do you think, with that competition between Wellington and Ryan Manning, then, do you think Charlie Taylor is one who could be offloaded? Because 3 left backs does seem a little bit excessive, doesn't it?
Played no football last year at all. Charlie Taylor, no football for us at all. I think he played the last game of the season, played a little bit under Martin for the first 2, fell out of favour really quickly. Then you ended up with... he just got totally dropped, wasn't even making match day squads and played no football all season. Didn't feature at all under Juric, didn't feature under Russ to the very, very end when we had a bit of an injury crisis at centre-back. So I think he'll move on. He's got a year remaining on his contract, Charlie Taylor. So yeah, big call that one. They brought him in on a free, so I think they could find a way to move him on. He'll probably get moved on.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So let's have a look at midfield then, because you've got Flynn Downs. Are we talking about him as one of Southampton's most important players this season?
Yeah, Flynn Downs. Yeah, there was a lot of talk of Ipswich Town actually a couple of days ago, that he was reportedly seen at their training ground, which I think would be absolute nonsense. He had a little bit of a hissy fit mid-season last year. He fell out with Jurich, probably around Christmas time, and he was excluded from the squad. It come out in public by the manager as well, and it took him a little while to force his way back in the side, but definitely not a Premier League player. I think we've discovered that one pretty quickly. Really struggled at that level. Maybe just not fit enough, not got enough game time, but did struggle. But he'd be a key player in midfield next season. No doubt about that. You bring Shay Charles back from Sheffield Wednesday in that loan. I think you could have a really good combination there.
Yeah, because don't forget, I mean, the club in 2023 invested a lot of money in Shay Charles. Was it an £8 million signing? And I think at the time he probably wasn't ready to get close to living up to that kind of outlay. But I think having had that loan at Sheffield Wednesday, where maybe the expectations were slightly lower, and also having a bit of time to adjust to senior football, I think that this could be the season where Shay Charles really finds that extra gear and is going to be a top end championship player.
Yeah, no, I do. I think it's a big year for Shay Charles. I think he'll play a key role actually. I think he'll be really important. I spoke to a lot of Sheffield Wednesday fans about how he performed last year, and everybody was absolutely raving about him. So I think he'd be a big player for Saints next season.
Yeah, solid midfielder, Shay Charles. He can look after the ball. In terms of the more forward-thinking operators, you've got Joe Aribo, who, whenever I've seen him, certainly earlier in his career, he's just a real dynamo with bags of energy. He likes to get up and down. And then I tend to think of Will Smallbone as quite a creative eight. So a couple of other more forward-thinking options in your midfield.
Yeah, I think Aribo may be moved on. To be fair, I heard a few whispers the last couple of weeks that they're open for offers to cut price deal to get rid of him now to move him on. Final year of his contract. I'm not sure Saints want that to run down and not fetch a fee for him. So my thoughts are he could be moved on, but it's an area that he did really well under Martin at the back end of that last championship campaign. Quite versatile. He could play through midfield. He ended up playing centre back for Jurich for a period of time last year, which was absolutely bizarre. He played left side centre back because he had nobody that could play at centre back with a left foot, and Aribo did that. He has mixed games, struggles to really be consistent. I wouldn't say he's a priority to move on. If you're talking about players to move on, he's definitely not a priority to move on. Somebody that could play a role next season, whether he be a dead starter week in, week out, I'm not convinced.
Do you think that there's a chance that Southampton could make nine figures in terms of player sales this summer, because cumulatively? Because we're talking about Aaron Ramsdale, who, I mean, I imagine it's at least £30 million that you'd be demanding for him up front. Yeah, there's who's the other one in Taylor Harwood Bellis could be interested in him. You've got Aribo, Tyler Dibbling, who the club's holding out for an astronomical fee for. Matheus Fernandes as well, who we'll come on to. Do you think that the club's going to recoup a lot in terms of player sales, even after the back of the season that you've just had?
Yeah, I think they will. And there's a lot of talk that they're saying that they don't have to sell, but that they want to raise as much as they can. I think last time around is around about 140, 150 million that they've raised. It was a huge amount. I think they will. I think they raise good money on those players. I think the big one will be Matheus Fernandes, whether they fetch big money for him. I think Ramsdale, the exit fee of his contract, I think as long as somebody's prepared to purchase him for what they bought him for, they automatically have to sell him. So I believe that's around 20 million. So they're fetched upwards of 20 million for him.
Right.
They've already fetched a fairly good fee on Kamaldeen Silamana, who's already gone. 17 million they got for him. Which is unbelievable. And there's add-ons to that as well. Paul Onuachu, it's not been confirmed by Trabzonspor, but he's going to go there for around sort of 5 to 7 million. It's not been confirmed the actual fee, but they're already fetching some nice fees on players.
Yeah, so that's going to imagine Southampton could go big late in the window after some of those sales, because you imagine, a few of them are going to happen. In terms of, do you think one more midfield is going to be needed if Aribo goes, and what kind of profile do you think you'd be looking for?
Yeah, no, they want a creative midfielder. They've already come out and pretty much said that. The owner's already said that, Dragon. So, like, he wants a creative midfielder. Something we've been crying out for a long time. Fernandez works really hard, but he's not a really creative midfielder. Plays in midfield. He does all the simple things and tidies things up really, really well. But doesn't create loads of chances. That they need players now, Saints, that are going to start creating chances. Brought in a new striker today. It's just been confirmed that Damien Downs is going to be the new striker. Great having a new striker, but you have to find players that are going to create chances. It relied on Adam Armstrong creating a lot of them last time round. So yeah, I think somebody to come in and replace Aribo will be, if they're going to let him go, is really important. But Aribo again is not creative enough. Really good player, but just doesn't create anywhere near enough.
Yeah, he's more of a up and down kind of player, isn't he, than necessarily super creative. But you have started an attacking midfielder in Matsuki. Do you think he's somebody who can fit that description?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see that. He's very. We signed him a year ago, and he went out on loans. We bought
Oh,
we bought him last summer, and he was sent out to. He went out one of the sister clubs, and had a season in Turkey. I think he did okay. We don't know. He's left-footed, left-sided player. He's in pre-season training with the first team squad, so we may get a glimpse of him at the weekend. There was a bit of talk: will he go back out on loan? Will he settle here? I think that one remains to be seen. I don't know loads about him, but I just know that he's predominantly left-footed.
right, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, so we'll have to wait and see if Matsuki can come into that equation. Just talk to me about Matheus Fernandes then, Martin, because although you said he's not super creative, you didn't mention that industry that he brings there. I think when I asked you about key Southampton players from last season, off camera a couple of weeks ago, I think Matheus Fernandes was, in terms of outfield players, by far and away Southampton's top performer. So what
Yeah.
was it beyond that hard graft that he brought that made him really stand out for Southampton?
Yeah, he was Southampton's best player by a country mile. He was absolutely phenomenal. He was brilliant last season, brilliant in midfield. The work that he did off the ball as well as on it, he doesn't give the ball away. His pass completion rate is just exemplary. A really, really good pro, worked really hard, and it must have been really tough for him to come to a new country, learn the language, and come to a side that struggled so much. And he was let down by so much around him. He would be amazing next season in the Championship. I just don't see him. I just see too many clubs come knocking the door for him. Whether the price tag will put those clubs off, I think Saints will want it in excess of around 35 million for
Yeah.
him to let him go. But he will have suitors, and Nottingham Forest have already said they're very, very keen on him. He's a brilliant player. I love watching him play last season. Like I said, didn't score a lot of goals, but he was absolutely brilliant.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So hopefully you can gain a lot of money for him, and find somebody else who can bring that kind of work ethic and bull retention. I'm wondering about the right wing, where you've got Tyler Dibbling there, who had featured a lot more prominently than he did in the Championship the year before, which is almost a little bit surprising in one way. Although I suppose he is would have been very young that year as well, wouldn't he? Tyler Dibbling. I mean, some of the figures that you've seen the club say they'd only sell for, but I don't know how true that is. But clearly, we're talking about an international talent.
Yeah, he's a brilliant player. That I really like Tyler. I've got a lot of time for him. I think he's still got a long way to go though. I still think he's not far from the finished article. He started the season really well under Russell. Broke his way in pre-season, impressed, along with Sam Amieo, who was very good last
Yeah.
pre-season. They were both good. But for me, Tyler bulked himself out. He looked quite strong. Played that game against Man United on TNT where he was very good on the day. And then got his first start against Ipswich in the next home game, scored that goal, and was really good to Christmas. His last really good game last season was actually under Russell Martin down at Brighton and Hove Albion at the Amex.
Right.
Played inside right on the night and was really good. Played more of a central role. And he was brilliant, linked everything up, carrying the ball, creating chances, just really good performance. But from that moment onwards, after we kind of come out the January transfer window, there was a lot of talk around his future. Where could he end up? Where will he go? There was talk of Tottenham. There was talk of Chelsea, Man United, all these clubs. And then whether that he was unsettled, and then somebody come out and said he wasn't happy with the offer that was offered to him by the football club. There was a lot of rumours, and what was true and what was not true, we don't really know. But he never, ever performed that well after that January window.
Interesting. So there could be a motivation aspect at play that where some of the interest in him is kind of getting into his head and taking him away from, because what makes a great player is the day-to-day preparation. It's sort of getting in at the right time. It's all those little 1%ers, isn't it? And I suppose the challenge for Will still is to make sure that amid all the interest in him, and we don't know what's going to happen with Tyler Dibbling this summer, don't entirely lose focus on what you're doing on the day-to-day basis.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like, he's back in training. He's reported to training now, so he's back in around a new manager, new energy. It'd be really interesting to see what happens to him over the summer. I do see him moving on. I think somebody will come and take him off us. I just think he's such a good talent, and at the right club and under the right manager. That's a big decision. Right club, right manager. Hard to come by. He could do really well, but yeah, I just can't imagine Dibbling playing in the Championship next season.
We're also in an area of football where lots of clubs will pay for potential, won't they? So if they think somebody's got that potential to skyrocket, then they're going to pay a premium for that. And so we are seeing that trend of players making those massive money moves before they've actually done very much. And I think that I'm curious to see how that plays out for Tyler Dibbling. But look, I think if he does stay, then what player to have for the Championship?
Yeah, we'd be very lucky to have him in the Championship. It'd be quite incredible, really.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of that left wing option, I suppose you've got a few contenders if we include Matsuki, who is a kind of left-sided player as well. You've got Ryan Fraser, who's more of a traditional winger, but you've also got inside forward options in Ben Brereton Diaz, Adam Armstrong, who tended to play down the middle last season, and Jay Robinson, who's a forward who's come through the academy. So a few players who can come in off that left side.
Yeah, no, that is. It'd be interesting to see what happens with Brereton Diaz, because he really struggled sort of the first sort of 2-3 games for us last season. Not far from a fan's favourite. He really struggled to create any chances. Whether it's just because it was the level, but it didn't ever look like a player that will be anywhere near good enough to play in the Premier League. Whether he'd be any good for the Championship, I'm not sure. Adam Armstrong played off one flank and he played off the other for the first sort of opening 4 or 5 games, and it was just disastrous. They didn't create any chances. They didn't get anywhere near the 6-yard box and never even looked like scoring. I think Brereton Diaz, they'd love to move him on if they could. Whether they'll be able to or not, I don't know. There's not loads of options out wide. We're really limited out wide. When you look at what we've got that can play out wide, now Camel Dean's been sold. There's talk about Rangers interested in Samadozi. He was out on loan in Belgium last season. A player that's come back from Anderlecht. He was at Anderlecht on loan. What will they do with the Dozy? Will they keep him? Will he be?
I quite like Dozy in the Championship, actually. Yeah.
A lot of talk. I know his agent's really busy at this moment in time, because there is a lot of talk that there are clubs queuing up for him. Apparently, according to the reports yesterday, that he's not somebody. Excuse me. That I want to see go. I'd like to keep hold of him, really.
Yeah, I like that he brings that bit of trickery, especially if you play him on the left. Brings that bit of trickery, and then he sort of seems to dink those crosses in, doesn't he? So he's got that real sort of technical ability. So yeah, I think Samadozi could be a useful player to have in the Championship.
Yeah, no, I do. I think he'd be really important. Really important.
In terms of the centre forward options, again, you've got Armstrong and Ben Brereton Diaz who can play there, although I don't see either can be a focal point. And I would possibly have similar question marks about Cameron Archer as a lone centre
Yeah.
forward, certainly. The one lone centre forward that I see from the pre-existing squad is probably Ross Stewart, but he's had lots of injuries over the last few years, which could undermine his progression. But you have signed Damien Downs this afternoon, haven't you?
Yeah, I think the striking department worries me a lot. Where the goals are going to come from. You saw what happened in the Premier League last season. There's no one to score goals. And Shay Adams last time round in the Championship was absolutely magnificent. And there was talk of Birmingham City looking to bring him in. What a great signing for Birmingham that would be if they could bring Adams back to the Championship. He was brilliant for Saints. He held the ball up. He was physical. He was strong, and he allowed us to get up the field. We had nobody like that last year. You were waiting for Archer to try and run in behind, but kind of run into a lot of dead alleys at times, and really struggled to get any service. So it's really hard to judge what he could do. I think Archer could play a big role if he can get service this year and rejuvenate his career, find some confidence, a manager that believes in him, because I don't think any of the managers believed in Cameron last year, and that was probably his biggest downfall. Really struggled. He missed a penalty so early in the season against Man United. It really affected him. And he really struggled to get going. He scored a really good goal at the Emirates at Arsenal. He took the goal so well, really, really good. And you wanted him to build on that. And he just struggled. Stewart, like you said, he's suffered with injuries. He's played limited game time for us. He was involved in the last 5-6 match day squads last year, and he started the last 2 or 3 games. He scored against Arsenal in the final game, and everyone was so chuffed for him because we all wanted to see him do well. For the first time since he's been at the club, Gabby gets a whole summer pre-season with us, which will be massive for him. I've seen images of him. He's got a smile on his face. I think he could be a really big player for us next season. I think if he could stay fit and get early goals in the season, I think he'd be key. And then Damien Downs has arrived today. I don't know loads about him, other than he played in Bundesliga 2 last year for FC Cologne. Look, he provided a lot of goals, and he scored a few at the back end of the season. And he didn't play a lot of minutes. He didn't start a lot of games, Damien Downs. So I'm quite intrigued by him as a signing. Obviously he's an international that's eyeing the World Cup with America next season. I think it's a really bold signing. They've paid a lot. It could be upwards of about £8 million for him. So it's quite big for a Championship club to be spending £8 million on a striker.
Yeah.
So I'm intrigued by him. That could become more. The £8 million could become more with Damien Downs as well, because I think the way this deal's structured, it could end up costing Saints a fair bit more than £8 million. So yeah, looking forward to seeing him. He'd probably get an extra week or so off because he's been away with his national side and played extra games at this Gold Cup in America. So yeah, I'm excited by him. See what he can do.
Any young lads coming through the academy that you're excited about? Obviously, Jay Robinson, I suppose, will be the obvious one because he made some appearances at the back end of last season and had some bright showings.
Yeah, Jay Robinson would be really important. I think he looked good when he broke through. He played a bit in the Premier League and look, didn't phase him at all. I thought his performance against Man United, he started Man United against Arsenal. Apologies. I thought he looked really good. He played really well. Wanted to take the ball. Was happy to receive it with players around him. Look, it looks a little bit lightweight, I'd say, at this moment in time. Needs to bulk himself out, but he would definitely be a squad player. You would think he'd be a part of the first team squad next season. You would think. Outside of that, Don Ballard never really pushed himself into first team contention. There are a lot of fans.
His loans have been hit and miss as well, Martin, in the lower divisions.
Real hit and miss. Comes back and does really well in the under 18s and scores hat tricks for fun whenever he plays under 18 football, but has really struggled to kick on and become a regular in and around the first team squad. So I'm not sure he'd be the one to break through. Sandra, there's a lot of potential with him though. He's a centre back. He played a bit of under 21s last year, was edging in and around the first team squad. Whether he'd be a first team squad member this season, that'd be very interesting. I think he probably would be unless he gets a loan. But yeah, for me, the one is definitely Jay Robinson.
Yeah, big one to watch this season, Jay Robinson. So in terms of I'm really trying to put together a picture, Martin, of the best 11 for Southampton. It's quite difficult because
Really difficult,
we've mentioned 4 or 5 players who could leave, And I suppose I think we'll still will almost be quite relieved when the transfer window's over
Yeah.
at the start of February, because that tends to be the point where you have clarity, and the players who are like, am I going to go? Am I going to stay? Am I going to, what are the options? And a bit more, the head's a bit more focused away.
Yeah.
They kind of have no choice but to knuckle down and say, okay, I'm here now, at least until January. I'm going to get my head down and help the team.
Mm.
And I think from a managerial point of view, that's an easier thing to manage than players who are kind of focused on, have half their mind on getting a move away.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I always think you want people that are going to be committed, don't you? You want people that are going to that want to be at the club, and you want the manager to believe in players that maybe not had managers that have believed in them before. Cameron Archer, I think, is a really good example of that. And knowing what you're going to be left with, I hate the season kicking off with the transfer window still open. It makes it just so uneasy, doesn't it? Because you could be starting with a side that you don't, like the first South Coast derby is like early in September, and it's not long after the window's closed. You're thinking, oh, geez, you could lose 2 or 3 players in that final couple of weeks. Terrible preparation when you got one of the biggest games of the season, in a South Coast derby coming up. So, yeah, I think he'd be delighted once the window gets shut and he knows what he's left with. But he has spoke a lot in the press, Will, still about not being a massive overhaul of the squad. He doesn't feel there needs to be a massive overhaul of this squad. I think once he's had a few games in pre-seasons, I think he will. I think he will need a lot out the door, and I think he's going to need some reinforcements, like 100%, like in key areas. We spoke about midfield, we spoke about out wide, maybe a right back, and a goalkeeper. I still think there's big question marks over what he's left with, and the damage of a season like we've just had. Gab, that the damage done on last season, it will not just hurt fans, it would have affected players. And you imagine what a dressing room is like when you're getting beaten week in, week out, and you've only won 2 games. Like, I've played football at amateur level, but when we get beaten every week, it gets a snappy place, and people blame other people, and atmosphere's not great, and tension builds up, and people fall out with one another. At a professional level, where you're in, day out, in coaches, going all over the country to play different games against different clubs, it must beat people up. So I do worry about like how much damage that did last season, and I think it remains to be seen. I think we'll find out pretty quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of remaining additions, then, Martin, I just, based on the conversations we've had so far, I think you're going to need a goalkeeper, just because we think Ramsdale's going to go, especially if somebody meets that 20 odd million sort of threshold. Definitely a right back. That's going to be a big priority. Centre half, you look good for. Left back, you look good. Central midfield, probably need another one, especially if Aribo goes. Probably need another couple of wide players. Ideally, 1 or 2 can play either side. Maybe a number 10 to replace Mateus Fernandes or offer that more creative element. And I don't know, maybe another centre forward if we're being sort of picky, if you like. So I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I think 6 or 7 additions are going to be needed between now and the end of the window, and expecting quite a few outgoings as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think there'd be loads of movement between now and the window closing. I really do. And I think there has to be as well. I didn't touch upon it, but Adam Armstrong was such a key part last time round in the championship. Scored the 24 goals, huge amount of assists, one of the best players in our squad. He really struggled at Premier League level again last year. Had a tough time. Went out on loan to West Brom. Didn't really get going at West Brom. He's come back for pre-season, and I heard through the local media, very good sources, that they are willing to take offers for Adam Armstrong. So will he be a Saints player come the start of September? I'm not convinced he will. But where do you go and get 24 goals? Everyone's like, yeah, his time's up. He's not good enough for the Premier League. We're in the Championship, and he can do it. He's tried and tested. I really hope that one's thought out, because they gave him a new contract last summer. I hope it's thought out. And if they are prepared to let him go, they've got somebody that they are confident that is going to do what he did last time round and score the goals and provide those assists, because he was brilliant last time round.
I agree, but I think it also depends on how you want to use him, because I don't see him as a lone striker, as a
No,
one up
definitely not.
top, and if we're talking about an inside forward, then it depends on how you want to use your wide players, because I think Will still might like the situation where you have a fullback who in possession is kind of like a winger, and then the other fullback tucks in. And in that case, you can have Adam Armstrong pushing on as basically like an in possession second striker, which could suit him nicely. But if you need your winger to be a winger, it's not Adam Armstrong's game. So I think there's one factor, which is Adam Armstrong definitely can score goals at championship level, therefore you keep him. But the other factor is, how's he going to fit into the system that Will still wants to build?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think it'd be interesting to see. That is a real big one for me. Is how that one unfolds in the next couple of weeks, and my gut feeling, like deep down, is if I think someone offers money for him, I think he'd go. Adam Armstrong, I do. I think he'd go.
Yeah, that makes sense. Do you know what kind of wage he's on? Is it going to be a big one for? Because he's a chat. You're only going to get championship interest in Adam Armstrong. You're not going to get Premier League interest.
Yeah.
So it's whether championship clubs will be willing to take on whatever his wage is going to be.
Yeah, I think he's been on good money. I think he's been on good money, around 50 grand a week, I think it was, reportedly. So he was on a decent salary. What that reduction was when he come down and played in the championship last time round. And I always think whether he's got that hunger to do it again, Gab. Like he was so hungry to prove himself and score goals again and find that old form, and he did it. And that opportunity to go back and play in the Premier League, and Martin did give him that opportunity early on in the Premier League campaign to play, miss some big chances, and just never looked like scoring any goals at that level. He's just not good enough for the Premier League, needs too many touches, and whether the Saints would be looking to think, do you know what, now's the time just to move him on.
But again, it's one thing wanting to move him on, but another thing somebody willing to take on those. Where I think, yeah, I mean, getting money for him, that, but then also somebody willing to pay 50 grand a week, or would Southampton cover 10 or 20 grand to that? I don't know. So that would be the question. I don't know whether we don't know whether that's definitely what the wage is. So that's a big factor there, I think.
Definitely, definitely.
So expectations then, Martin. There's one argument to say that Southampton have suffered 2 relegations in 3 seasons from the Premier League and have a lot of problems, and the squad is in a very, very stable position, and probably in a more uncertain position than maybe this time 2 years ago. There's another argument to say that you're a club with parachute payments. You're going to get 9 figures possibly in player sales this summer, if depending on what happens, and therefore you should have a huge amount of money and a massive advantage over the rest of the league, which should mean that the top 2 has to be the expectation. Where do you sit on that in terms of your own expectations as a fan?
Yeah, I just think if recruitment's done correctly and you can get the right bodies out and get the right bodies in and get some stability, for me, automatic promotion has to be the aim. I think is a parachute payment side, a club of that stature that's they've yo-yoed for the last couple of years. I think we have to hit the ground running really, really quickly. And for me, as a fan, I think a lot of fans were saying, I want top 2. Realistically, let's be honest, like you said, there's been a lot of damage done, 2 relegations in 3 years, a dreadful campaign, the damage that's probably done to some of the players. A lot of the fans would be happy to drop down and spend some time in the championship, but I think you've got to be careful what you wish for. I don't think it's a league where you can drop down and spend a long period of time and we'll go down for 2 seasons. You look at the pressure on Leeds. They had to get back last season because of the financial implications by not getting promoted. They stuck with their manager and they worked really, really hard to get out that division, and that they went up as champions, and they were absolutely brilliant. I love to see Saints do that, like at the first attempt. I don't want to be trying to do it at the second attempt, but I think we have to bear in mind that the damage done, that if it doesn't quite happen this coming season, I would accept it if it doesn't. But I think initially looking from the outside in, I think you have to gun it for automatic promotion and try and be defensively sound, which is what I think you do. Russell wasn't. I think if defensively you can be really sound and you can find your way to score yourself goals and get form, I think the fans are brilliant down here. You get absolutely behind the team, home and away, and I think you'll be onto an absolute winner. But it's all about a really good start, but the hard work and getting that squad right now, and the work that's going on behind the scenes to assemble a team that's going to challenge.
Yeah, I think top two has to be the aim, and top six has to be the minimum expectation. I think
Absolutely,
for
yeah,
Southampton this
absolutely,
season.
absolutely, yeah.
As you know, I'm doing my 1 to 24 predictions. I got it completely wrong with Southampton last time. I think I had you seventh, and you ended up getting promoted. So I need to up my game on the Saints. But my process for doing it this year is to rate each team, Martin, on 14 different categories that I think are going to determine their fate. So what I'm going to do is shout a category, give me a number between 1 and 10.
Okay.
First category is ownership.
Oh, God, that's a good one. What one being the worst?
Yeah.
Ownership. I give it a 4.
For ownership for Sports Republic. Infrastructure.
I think we've got really good infrastructure. I think out of any club there, I think the infrastructure is phenomenal. I'd put it top of the pile.
10.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think the infrastructure is brilliant.
Great stuff. Next one is playing budget.
Playing budget, I think I'm gonna give it a 7. Playing budget. I'm not convinced there'll be loads of money to spend.
Bear in mind this is relative to the rest of the championship and not
Oh,
necessarily.
if you're relative, to the rest of the championship, it'd be 10.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
Management. Difficult one, this, because we've not seen Will still yet. So it's whether you want to go on instinct or.
Do you know what? I'm gonna give him a 9. I'm gonna be really confident and give him a 9.
Bold. Okay, I like
Be
it.
really bold with my prediction.
Nice. Goalkeeping unit.
Well, at the moment with Ramsdale, it's a 10, but that could change really quickly and soon become a 5.
Okay.
So it's just a stab in the middle and say I'm going to give it a 7.5.
Okay, 7.5.
Yeah.
Goal defense is the next one.
Yeah, I think there's a few areas. We spoke about fullback, a lot of centre backs. I'll give it an 8.
An 8 for the defence. Midfield.
On paper at the moment, I think we've got probably an 8.5, 9 out of 10 midfield. If you exclude the wingers, that could change with bodies going out the door. I just give it. I'll give it. If it kept Fernandez, kept Dibbling, it's a 10 out of 10 midfield, isn't it? In Shay Charles and Flynn Downs, it could be the best midfield in the championship. As it stands, it's a good 9.5 out of 10, I'd say, at this moment. But that could change pretty quickly.
Should we go a 9.5 then?
Go 9.5.
All right. Next one is attack.
Oh, I'm a little bit concerned in attack. I'm going to give it a 7.5 at the moment. I'm concerned with the wide players, and where the goals are going to come from and those assists that I spoke about during the show.
Squad depth for this stage of the window. Now, for me, this is an interesting one because on the one hand, you do seem to have a lot of players under contract, and yet on the other hand, we're still looking at 6 or 7 areas that need strengthening.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of areas that need strengthening, that's for sure. I'd probably say at this moment in time, because you're going to lose a lot of bodies and there's going to be a lot of holes, I think it's probably a 7.5, 8 at this moment in time.
Okay. Squad stability is the next one.
God, I'd say it's pretty low. I think the stability of the squad is maybe a little bit of a concern at this moment in time. I'd say it's a 4.
4 for squad stability. Okay. Next one is growth potential. So players you think are going to get better and better. So Tyler Dibbling, for instance, would be one of them.
Yeah, I think there's great potential to improve everybody. I think there's a solid 9 there, really. I think you could grow a lot of players. I think from where we've come from and how bad we've been, anything he achieves now is going to be positive moving forward.
Team spirit.
At this moment in time, I think it's pretty low. I think I would say it's, though they've all got smiles on their faces during pre-season. I would say it's a 4. I'd say it's really low.
4. Okay, 4 for team spirit. Hopefully, Will still can improve that. Fitness.
I'll give it a 1. I think it's been dreadful. I think it's been really, really short. I think under Martin, it was a side that was used to having the ball too much. terrible out of possession, and in the Premier League we looked cut way short last season. I think you go back to Nathan Jones after the last World Cup, the side looked really unfit from that. From the minute Hasenhüttl left, after that World Cup and Jones took over, I think fitness is a big issue. I think it needs improving rapidly, and the fact that we've seen so much of running images during this pre-season and the images that are shared, I would imagine he's got him running a lot.
Yeah, because also Will still likes his teams to be really aggressive against the ball and be very fit. So I expect, so it might be a 1 for right now, but I also think it probably end up higher than that after a good pre-season.
I hope so.
Hope so.
Yeah.
And finally, it's quality, pretty high, that one, I think.
Yeah, I think quality is like 9, 10 out of 10. Really, I really do. I think it's right up there. Just whether they got someone that's going to score enough goals, but I think the quality in the squad is really good. On paper, it's very, very good. And if everyone turns up and there's a system that works and a manager that's got them playing in a certain way, I think it's a 9.5, 10 out of 10. I really do.
Great stuff. So some final quick fire questions from me then, Martin, before we wrap up. What's the biggest reason to believe in Southampton right now?
The fan base. I think the fan base are insanely good. They're a massive reason to believe. And secondly, I think that we've got the nucleus of a really, really good squad.
Biggest reason for doubt?
A manager that doesn't know the league, and a ownership that traditionally struggle in transfer windows. Whether that's the biggest one for me, is whether they will. The biggest doubt is whether they will get this window right.
And too early for prediction, but give me a rough feel for where you think next season might be heading for Southampton.
I think we'll be in the playoffs. My gut feeling. I don't think we'll quite have enough. If I really want to see us win it, I have this horrible feeling that the transfer window won't unravel. Like my heart is saying top 2. That's my heart. But I have to be realistic of what we've spoken about. And when you sit down in a conversation like this and talk about it, and you look back on last season, I think realistically it will probably end up being a playoff side.
There you have it. Well, listen, Martin, it's been such a pleasure to have you on. Implore everybody to go and subscribe to Football Martin on YouTube, and you've also got some TikTok stuff. So talk to us about the content you've got planned for next season.
Yeah, I've grown my channel. I'm a rapidly growing channel, predominantly based around Southampton, but I will cover different games from both the Premier League and the Championship next season. Loads of watch-alongs that I'm going to do. I get up and down the country reporting on Southampton, so post-match instant reaction videos at any game that I go to, whether that's Southampton or another game. I like to give my views and put on my channel of the game that I've watched that day, and obviously preview all the games in advance. Loads of fan cam, loads of interactions. We've got fan forums that we're doing each week as well, where I bring fans onto the show. And there's a weekly podcast planned for next season as well, where we'll be covering everything in the week around Southampton. It's going to be a packed campaign. To get up and down the country to every game will be really difficult, but I will cover every single Southampton game on my channel next season.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I'd implore everyone to go and follow Martin Sanders on Twitter, on TikTok, and subscribe on YouTube. Talking of which, you can also subscribe to EFL Debate on YouTube and on Spotify as well. That would really help us out. Thanks once again to Martin Sanders for joining us this afternoon. Thanks to you for watching at home, and we'll see you again for another Summer Deep Dive very soon.